can you share us a bit more about what you do yourself? What's your day-to-day like, and what have you built so far, and a bit of your background, perhaps?
Sure. So, well, basically, straight out of college, I joined VC. I did that for about 5 6 years, 5 years-ish. And then, well, that was in and of itself quite the experience. I don't regret it at all. I mean, VC being one of the more time, not consuming. Basically, I did not have much freedom there either. It was a whenever you had to be on call, on calls, you definitely had to be working through the night, sleeping at the office. These are things very, very standard. But I had great mentors there. I learned an immense amount. But what I realized was that I was starting to get into a hole of kind of, it was a very streamlined team that we had in the Hong Kong office at least. And I realized that I was starting to only think the ways that my bosses thought. And even though that was a really great thing, I wanted to also kind of expand my horizons in different forms. I was only ever, not groomed, but I was only ever taught to analyze private equity investments. I knew quite little about bonds, about stocks. It was not, I wouldn't say that it was anyone's fault. It's simply my own. I was just drained from playing a lot of catch up to just get to that level in VC. So when it was 5 years there, and I realized that my dad was also getting a little bit older. He's on the a little bit older side, hitting 77 now. And at the time, my ex-girlfriend had just lost her mom very suddenly to cancer. And it made me really understand that life is so precious, life is so fragile. I can't really afford to, not spend time with them and not learn what I can from, especially from my dad, who's been asking me for the longest time that, or at least letting me know as an only child, that if I don't take over what he's built, no one will, and or at least no one with that kind of enthusiasm will. And so I realized quite quickly that this timing was starting to fit in everything quite well. Club Manhattan was already kind of brewing. The ideas were being made there, and so once that decision was made, I decided, okay, you know what? I've learned what I could. Five plus years at the same job. It was I loved that experience, but it was time for me to go back to family, learn what I could from my dad, and kind of make sure that I understood how to take care of the family business in case anything happens to my dad or my mom, because it really was an eye-opening experience, and the fact that it could happen within just 2 to 3 months, I put myself in the same shoes. I wouldn't even know where to begin, So I realized better now than never, and make sure I don't live life with any kind of regrets, especially when it comes to family.
Yeah. So you got out of VC, and you mentioned you have three businesses, right? Which one did you start first?
Club Manhattan was actually the first one that I started.
Okay.
Family office and Club Manhattan kind of go hand in hand. When I joined the family office, I was also operating Club Manhattan at night, or at least it was everything was running, and obviously that was a time where it was super hectic, right? I don't have any F&B experience. I interned as a sushi chef one time, but that's pretty much it. But beyond that, I have no F&B experience. I have no hospitality training. I was finance through and through. But one of the reasons why we started Club Manhattan, or me and my dad decided to build this venue, is kind of very much twofold. Firstly, I wanted to build a place to share my passion for whiskey, and my dad also wanted to create a place that he and his friends could enjoy, me and my friends could enjoy. The second reason being, and this was a little bit more core for my dad's values, was that he wanted me to have experience in service, in F&B or hospitality. For him, he had his start as a bellboy. of all things, you know, moving his way up from carrying luggages all the way to being a director of New World now, he said that, you know, service industry is something that can really shape you as a person. The ability to humble yourself, to be able to, you know, put a smile on your face, serve drinks, handle customer service. These are things that can carry you far no matter what kind of career path you want to be. You want to be if you're in finance, or you want to, you know, be a chef, you want to do art, everything involves people. You know, it's a very people-based skill. So he said, Matthew, I want you to, you know, find something that you enjoy, you know, ergo the whiskey aspect, and then build that into something that can train you to learn service. And so that was something that we decided to build together, Club Manhattan. Yeah.
How is it like moving from a very high level investment standpoint of an analyst or investor to someone who is down on the ground serving drinks, making drinks, handling customer service back then?
That was, I'll tell you, it was a huge culture shock. Put it quite bluntly, you know, people, you know, both in terms of the customers and your staff. This is one of the most complicated things that I've had to encounter, and something that I am still getting my footing in still. It's something I'm not very good at. I'm not someone who can just put your foot down and say, hey, you know, do this done no matter the cost. I don't care if it costs you your weekend, get it done. Now you see, I was used to being told that in finance, in the VC job. It was a given. I would remember it'd be a Sunday, like a fine day like this. I would be hiking. I get a call. I need you in the office. Right now, it's not like, oh, I'm on a hike. It's like, okay, give me 1 second. I'm on a mountain. I'm going to climb down. I'll get to the office. But here in F&B, it's a little bit more. If I say do A, sometimes the message gets misconstrued in multiple ways. People have their own ways of thought, and suddenly A turns into B, and then someone else does C. It's much less direct, especially if you give people even more freedom. It ends up not getting done the way that you want it done. But here's the problem, or here's one of the issues. Who's to say that me with little F&B experience should say A, and my manager, who's been in F&B all his life, has to follow what I say? That's why I'm okay with a lot of leeway. There's much to learn from both ends. Me as a consumer of it, of F&B, of cocktails, of whiskey, versus them, their way of thinking of always having been in service. So there's a lot of, back and forth that I still have to come to terms with a little bit, to understand that I may not always be right. There's always ways to learn from both ends of the spectrum, I think. Yeah.
When did you realize that your way may not be the best way to do things?
I don't think it was any particular big thing, thankfully.
Okay.
Thankfully, there was never a big issue. I think that it was always a compromise. Yeah. In many ways, it'd be like, how would I put it? They would explain to me that, you know, service is not so straightforward. You cannot just, there are always people that might complain. There are always people that might not like to follow the rules. If you tell, for example, you know, anecdotally, totally, if there's a VVIP comes into the club and he starts smoking a cigarette in the hallway, and I tell my staff, we don't allow cigarettes. You can't smoke in my hallways. You're stinking up my entire venue. And my staff tell me, hey, but unfortunately, this is so and so. It's a little bit tough to tell him directly he can't smoke in the hallways, but maybe there's a compromise here that we can figure something out for him. For example, this is something where I would be like, okay, this is, as a business level sense, this is hurting my business, but on their side of service, you know, and this is something that I've got quite good at as well, is that it's always how you can talk to the customer to make everybody happy. You know, maybe tell them, hey, I'll give you a room to smoke your cigarette. You don't have to smoke in our hallway. A nice private room, you can sit down. I'll give you a nice ashtray. You handle yourself. You know, many different ways to approach it without having to insult or hurt any people's feelings. Basically, the guests that we get right now, what Hong Kong F&B is kind of going through after post-COVID, is one of the issues that we faced at Club Manhattan is who's still here, you know, running a nightlife experience, live music and karaoke and cocktails in a semi-private venue. A lot of the clientele that we used to get back in, you know, pre-COVID times, they're not here anymore. You know, a lot of people now travel. I think during any kind of weekend, it's super easy to head up to Shenzhen. Food is pretty great. Everything's cheaper, and to me, I think most importantly, service is really good up there. I think the way that people are trained up there is leapfrogged Hong Kong by far, especially our local talent here in Hong Kong. COVID led to a lot of F&B, the best ones in F&B, to go on to bigger and brighter things. This was something that you know, matter of fact, of course, they would move on to different industries when F&B was just not doing so well. And in terms of clientele, people are traveling. Long weekends are probably the worst for us because that's a great opportunity for other people to go Thailand, to go Japan, to go even further. And then you're left with people, I think, that just don't have the same kind of spending power. Obviously, we're not in a great economy right now. People can't pop bottles as they used to. It used to be Dom trains if you go clubbing. Now it's Moe or VC trains at best. You know, it's very rare to ever get people to spend like they used to. Even my clientele would be like, oh, before they'd be popping Macallan 18 Cherry Oak. Now forget that. Macallan 12 double cast, give me that. I'm good. The whole point is no one's here showing off anymore. It's a great thing as well. It's no one needs to want to show off. But then obviously not great for venues like ours where you know, it used to be $7,000 a bottle. Now people are popping maybe $2,000 bottles. It's much. What I've learned is that you have to leave that in the past. This is the new norm. You can't be like, oh, Hong Kong's back. You know, post COVID, we're gonna get tourism. We're gonna get mainland Chinese coming in. No, absolutely not. They have better places to be than in Hong Kong. To accept that fact is definitely the first step to moving to understand that we need to either upgrade our service, get people to, you know, be a little bit more salesy, cut costs wherever possible. This is the new norm you have to adapt to, or like with a lot of other places, you're going to shut down. You just can't survive anymore on the clientele that you used to. And if you keep that mindset, you won't last very long.
You basically pivot and improve the quality.
Pivot for sure. In mentality, I think it's not like, oh, you don't want to do local guests anymore. You want to cater towards Westerners, foreigners. You want to cater towards mainland Chinese. They're just not as abundantly in Hong Kong anymore as they used to be. So that's the mentality change to understand. Okay, know your customer. Now you have to adapt to the people that are not going out every night. You have to try to adapt. Instead of bottle service, give good cocktail service. Cocktails is something that you can do any weekend. Weekday. Happy hours. You know, these are great ways of generating revenue with the customers in Hong Kong, versus saying, okay, I want to make sure that we have good bottle sales. I want to make sure people are in our private rooms. Not that many people are going to be in private rooms on a weekday night. You know, who's going to start spending, you know, our largest private room has a minimum charge of $20,000. Who's going to go into a room on a Tuesday night and blow $20,000? You know, it's rare these days. Now you just have to instead focus on, okay, let's do events in our lounge. Let's promote the live music. Instead of, you know, putting all your baskets in one big clientele, let's put many different eggs in the smaller clientele. Let's sell more cocktails. It's great for cost. It's much more friendly to a nice weekday vibe. Happy hours are great. Let's think and focus a little bit more on that versus constantly trying to think of our private room service.
Right. You're quite young. You're 28, right?
29.
29. Still a very young
Yeah.
person to own business, to have this many experiences. Family office, bar, and selling yards. You mentioned about your dad a lot in our past conversations. Can you share us a bit more about that, like how he has taught you to become the person who we are now?
He's definitely my mentor, and that's for sure. I mean, how would I put it? I started working with him directly about 2 years now, 2.5 years or so. And, you know, how would I put it? It's, as I mentioned, we have a bit of an age gap. He's 77, I'm 29. It's quite a big generational gap. You know, there's one generation actually in between us still. His generation of love, of teaching is very much the old style of tough love. You know, almost the style of kick him when he's down, because I think in many ways his mentality is that if he can push me as hard as anyone can possibly push, nothing ever in my life can hurt me again. There cannot be any worse scenario, you know. Also emotionally, because remember, I'm working with my dad. It's often very hard for me to separate dad and boss. And that's one of the conflicts I feel like I've internally had. But I think when I think of him as a boss, at the same time, that helps a lot. I do learn a lot more from him through, you know, his criticisms in many different ways. As long as I learn to also not take it to heart. I think that's also really important. That, you know, if a boss criticizes you, I don't think you'd be like, oh, you know, you wouldn't feel that emotional about it. You feel like, in a work sense, right? You'd be upset, but not emotionally. And so I think that's one of the things that I've taught myself to also do as well.
How do you do that? I can imagine maybe your dad give you some kind of criticism during work, but if it was me, I would probably take it quite seriously. I take it quite emotionally, and probably bothers me throughout my whole night too. Right?
I used to, but then I realized that deep down, you know, he's only doing this because he wants me to really, really learn and learn the hard way. That you know, that I might not be doing things the right way, or I might be a bit, as you pointed out, a bit young to be running these things. There's a lot left for me to be learning. I'm very much still a learner, but at the same time, I also have to give a lot of directions. So yeah, actually, you know, very small, minute changes, I think, to help me separate dad and boss. It's like I don't ever call him dad in the office. I call him Mr. Fong. It's also helped me kind of personify him as someone else. Also because, you know, if I'm working at with all my colleagues, I'm just going to say, oh, dad's looking for you, my dad's looking for you. I'd rather just say Mr. Fong's looking for you, or Mr. Fong said this, Mr. Fong said that, not my father says this. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I'd rather distance myself. It also helps with my staff and my office team as well, that I am also like you. We call him Fong San, you know, we're all in this together as well. It's a little bit of that camaraderie aspect versus separating that my family versus you. No, man, I'm one of you as well. We're all working for Mr. Fong. And I think that also helps quite a bit. In building some team cooperation.
Can you share us an example of the biggest advice or biggest lesson you've learned from him?
I think it's all more emotional. I think I've learned to be a tougher person through perseverance.
Okay.
And it's very, very true. I think you know, I've thought about it a long time that, yeah, I don't think anything could really hurt me that much more anymore. I feel like what I've endured and how my relationship with my dad has persevered is a sign that, you know, I can take a lot of shit. I think that's probably my biggest thing that I will ever take away from my entire experience here, that I don't think that much can hurt me anymore.
Yeah, it sounds like both of you are very different people. Like you're more, you're very empathetic. He's a tough love kind of guy. I'm not saying he's not empathetic, but tough guy. It probably comes from a lot comes from experience.
Yeah.
So where do you see yourself in? Let's just talk about 5 to 10 years time. Will you still be working in the same industry? Will your focus be still in Club Manhattan, or you talk about yacht a little bit back then, I remember, and family office recently?
So I think in 5 to 10 years, definitely by then I would have taken over everything. I imagine. I want my dad to retire ASAP, but he needs to trust me, and hell, I don't trust myself yet either. So these next 5 years, or at least, actually no, not even 5. Let's say these next 1 to 2 to hopefully maybe 3 years, I really need to buckle down. This is where I need to really make sure that my dad can safely transition things off to me. I really need to learn the way that he will, he thinks, how he's, operated all these years, and then add my twists here and there and everywhere. Not to say I'm going to be, locked in to running Club Manhattan or running the yacht business. The family office will, of course, always exist. But even then, I think, I have to at least learn how he's operating these businesses so that I can also do whatever I want to do down the line. Ideally, what I'd like to see is that I run more the investment side, and the operational things that we're running, the yacht business or Manhattan, I don't want to be as operationally involved. I want to hire good talent, people I trust to manage these businesses for me. I'll be there to obviously oversee and not be micromanaging, which I think my dad is doing a lot of right now. I think my dad is also at Manhattan almost every day too, making sure everything is good, service level. He works, if I say I work hard, he works 10 times harder than me, and he's old. So I have no excuse. It's kind of that, he's not like telling, going back to it a little bit, he's not like scolding me and not doing work. He's working just as hard, which is also an absolute inspiration to me to work just as hard, if not harder than him, than my 70-plus-year-old dad. So yeah, but in 5 to 10 years, I definitely hope to be focused a little bit more on finance, and then my hobbies would be these different little projects that I'll be working on. To be fair, I'm already starting a little bit, beyond Manhattan and the yacht management. Actually, going to be working on a new nightlife project coming up too, by the end of the year. So that's something that I'm personally, without my dad's influence, I'm going to be working on a little bit. So that's going to be a fun little thing.
Since you've talked about like 3 businesses that you have, like how can you mind sharing a bit more your thoughts on the future in Hong Kong, how it will affect your F&B, your family office, and the yacht business?
So, in my own personal way, obviously we touched a little upon about F&B going in Hong Kong. I think it's going to take a while before we can ever really go a place where we can say, oh, we're content with F&B. I think it'd be, I think nobody really wants to start a new F&B spot right now in Hong Kong. It's a little bit very, very risky. Although it's I like it. To be fair, even though it's known as frustration and betrayal, F&B is kind of like, I like having a venue. I like having friends come over, support. It's one of the most rewarding experiences for me, for sure, by far, is to be able to have built a place that my friends genuinely love. They keep coming back to. We've had so many great times. I've met so many great people. We reconnected as well, at Manhattan as well. That's something that, unlike finance, unlike yacht management, this is such a social thing that I'm so happy to have, hosting weekly poker games, for example. I always want to have something in F&B. I think that's for sure what I want to do, whether it be restaurants or bar, a club. I want something in F&B. In terms of yacht management, for example, COVID was incredibly great for us.
Interesting.
It was our record years, because everyone was locked in Hong Kong. Everyone was locked here, right? Which means all your high net worth individuals are twiddling their thumbs at home. They were desperate for an escape. They sold their airplanes and they bought boats, because that's the one thing that was still, in that gray area in Hong Kong, where if a boat was moving, you could have people on. It just can't be docked. So people could host parties, people could go have dinner. A lot of the social distancing rules were not applicable to transport vessels like yachts. So we sold an incredible amount of like huge 100-foot plus yachts during that period. For all of us now, actually there was just last month, there was Asia's very first super yacht summit in Hong Kong. We held the welcome party for them at Manhattan, actually, which was incredible. Some of the biggest yacht makers, all in Hong Kong, were all in Manhattan that night, because the summit itself was in the Renaissance Harbor View. So it was perfect timing. And a lot of these topics were touched upon, about the future of super yachts sales in the whole of Asia Pacific. Gotta say, especially in Hong Kong, it's kind of grim. It wasn't a great outlook, and people were not that optimistic about it. First and foremost, I think obviously with China being a little slowed down and money being much harder to get out. KYC has been a huge issue. People say they want to buy this yacht. You go through all this work and turns out they don't have any money, or at least they don't have a way to get their money out without drawing too much attention. So, that's one aspect. The second aspect touched upon, especially very specific to Hong Kong, is the lack of support from the government for these super yachts. Even though this was the Asia Pacific Super Yacht Summit, the Dubai Tourism Board had sent representatives over to talk about how super yachts have helped tourism within Dubai. We barely got any Hong Kong government support whatsoever. Goes to show how little they understand how this is actually quite a big leisure, a touch point for charter yachts, for tourism. We don't have the infrastructure to support sales of these super yachts. There's only 2 marinas in Hong Kong that are capable of holding, mega yachts, of like 200 foot plus, and there's such limited space. If you have no infrastructure, you can't buy it. What's the point of any of these guys, these big yacht manufacturers, to even sell to us if we can't even have the boat in Hong Kong? Mm-hmm. So that was something for me. Attending that summit was really eye-opening. That for me, we've been still okay-ish post-COVID. We still been able to sell a couple of yachts a year, but definitely right now we're not seeing things improve at the moment. Mm. Everyone is, plateauing for sure. Mm. Yeah.
How did you when did you get into the yacht business? I know I'm going back to like point number one, because I haven't really asked you too much about your yacht business.
Well, so I guess I'm definitely still an amateur in this industry. I only very recently this year, so about half a year ago, started to wet my feet a little bit in this industry. I've enjoyed yachts ever since I was a child. My dad has a huge passion for it. We've been boating since I was a kid. My dad loves fishing. It's one of his huge hobbies to do, and I have great memories going fishing with him. And so, I've had exposure, but never to like an industry level understanding. And, this summit that I was talking about just a month ago was really my eye-opener. I had attended a couple of yacht festivals before. It's a very glamorous business. It's also very sales-heavy business. You have to love, yachting to be able to even be a part of this industry. And for me, that's kind of, I was inspired by a lot of the my staff, inspired by people that I met at the yacht summit, at the yacht festival. These guys were incredibly learned in all this technical specs in yachting. It's also it's reminiscent of how I got into whiskey in the first place. Have a good mentor. Have someone who can tell you from all the way from your beginner level all the way to the expert level. Have an expert tell you what is the best kind of yacht you've been in. You get amazed, you feel inspired. It's so overwhelming. And then you humble yourself. You go back to the beginning. You go back to the smaller yachts, the speedboats, even nautiques, like wake surfing boats. We sell those too. Then you can appreciate every little aspect all the way from, yes, you can sell a dinghy all the way to mega yachts. And that's kind of very reminiscent of my journey from whiskey. Starting from, I had a really great mentor who taught me everything I know about whiskey. I was an absolute amateur, and he, just drinking maybe Macallan's or blue black labels, Jack Daniels back in college. He gave me some of like a $50,000 bottle, and he told me, try it. I'm like, but I wouldn't know. He said, just try it, I'll guide you through it. And that bottle wowed me. It was an incredible bottle. I was like, oh my God, this is what whiskey can be. If you only ever start from, basic level stuff, you won't know what's better. And it's also important that you also humble yourself and you can't just drink $50,000 bottles, but at least you know what's the goal. Okay, that's the end game there. Now let's start from the beginning and let's work our way up to the end game. And so that's my whiskey journey, and very similar. I feel that same inspiration for yachting, having been on some of these like mega yachts during the yacht festivals and meeting a lot of these guys on the Yacht Summit. Now I'm starting again from very beginning and learning my way up to get there. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, still at the very bottom level here.
I hope you don't mind me asking,
Sure.
how does the yacht business work?
Sure.
So you guys buy yachts from overseas and sell in Hong Kong, or how does it work?
So we are more of a yacht management company. How I kind of describe us is that we are not the brokers. So we actually work with the brokers. Put it this way, if the brokers are the agents for the yacht manufacturers, right? We are the agents for the clients. Through my dad's, very vast network, a lot of people have come to learn to trust him. It's all about the trust game, that they know that we're not trying to rip them off. They know that we have their wishes in our best interests. So they trust us. Trust is such an important aspect. You can't trust an agent. Well, you can, but you can't trust them wholly. You know that they're trying to sell you something. You know that there's an angle there. So because, number one, many agents only support one brand, one group. If you have Simpson Marine, for example, they only basically sell San Lorenzo, one brand. So if you go to them, you go to Simpson Marine, they will only ever show you different models of San Lorenzo. However, if you come to us, when someone says, I want a 100-foot plus yacht, I will then show you not just San Lorenzo yachts. I'll show you San Lorenzo yachts because I have a great relationship with Simpson. I'll also show you Ferretti yachts. I'll show you Wally yachts. You got all sorts of kinds. You'll open up to much more variety. And then not just that, we've sold so many to specific clientele, specifically both local and mainland Chinese. We know how to tailor yachts to Asian profiles. I'll give you a very anecdotal example. Hong Kong yachting, we don't stay overnight. We go for day trips, But these are European yachts. They were built to be traveling from France to Italy to Ibiza. They're meant for excursions, for all these things. That's what they were designed to interiorly, designed to be like. However, so for example, that means that in your master bedroom, you're gonna have a massive master bedroom. You're gonna have a walk-in closet. You're gonna have a huge study desk for your work and everything. We don't ever use that in Hong Kong. That's not the way we use our yachts. So what we do, for example, we demolish the walk-in closet. We turn the study into maybe a smaller closet, and we give you a much nicer, roomier bathroom that you can use. Maybe there's a bathtub you can use after you go swimming. Maybe you add a nice shower, a rain bath. And for example, in a lot of European yachts, you'd have a bidet, and then you'd also have a toilet. Screw that. Let's get a Toto, put that in, and then it has everything all in one. That's a great way to save a lot of space. You can add a little stool instead. Another example, Europeans or Western much prefer long table designs. We prefer round tables with lazy Susans. So we'll absolutely customize way to fit, that kind of dining setup versus a long table where much more traditional to Western fine dining, which we would often not have. We'd have big steamed fish instead, put it in the middle, and we share on a lazy Susan. So these are the little things that we think about for the clients, and we go to the agents and the manufacturers directly to tell them to adjust so that it fits every single client's detail.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, okay, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know agents only represent one company.
Most do. There are ones like us that also have like, can span a lot. But a lot of the I would say the better ones are the ones that only represent one brand. I mean, one brand can have multiple different kinds of yachts, for example. But yeah, that's right. But we also do management, so we don't just do sales. We manage 2 yachts in Hong Kong right now, about 100 foot, 200 foot plus. 100 foot plus. And these, what that means is that we also take care of everything from top to bottom for the yacht. All the crew are our staff. So we manage all of their payroll, we manage their vacations, we manage their sick leaves, all of these things, make sure that they're trained, we train the staff, we hire the captains, make sure he has a good crew, we handle their visas, and then we also do all the repairs. So we're in charge of doing inspections. We of course hire third-party inspectors to double check that the ship is in good working condition. A lot of time we'll go on the yacht. Me and my dad ourselves would go onto the yacht because at the end of the day, we are also the consumers of the yachts. We know what clients are looking for. So we sit there, we sit on their sofas. We notice in this angle, what are you seeing? What do you feel? It's also the same thing we do in Manhattan. We, as consumers, we notice things that service staff or yacht crew would not notice because they're not the ones sitting on the sofas and noticing, hey, the sofa's creaking. They're just they put cushions. They wouldn't ever sit there. They wouldn't notice these little things that we would. So a lot of times, during these inspections, my dad and I would also go onto these yachts, feel it out, kind of pretend that we're living on this yacht. What do we notice? What do we hear that they might be desensitized to after working there for so long? Yeah,
interesting.
So that's a lot of the aspects that we do. Basically, end-to-end solution from yacht sales to all the way to finding you a dock as well, which is also one of the issues that is a huge issue right now. No space in Hong Kong. There's new marinas being built everywhere, but buying a boat is no problem. There's tons of boats in Europe that are waiting to be bought. But how many spots are left in Hong Kong with more and more yachts being bought, right?
I think one of the last question I have, or maybe I have more. Let's see where it
Sure.
goes. Yeah.
Shoot.
The economy of Hong Kong is not doing well. You may or may not cover it just now. Like, how do you see the yacht business be going in the future? You mentioned how you will pivot and how you make sure like quality maintains high standard in Club Manhattan. What about yacht business?
For us, yacht business, also because so one of the things that we have much less pressure on is that for agents, they have to purchase what we call stock boats. They are required to, in order to represent this brand, they have to buy a yacht and keep it in Hong Kong. And that's running costs, that's maintaining costs, because you can't just buy a yacht and keep it there. You have to, like a car, it has to run. It means you're putting mileage on that boat. Every week that boat, or every month that boat doesn't sell, it's lowering in value and it's costing that company. So they have pressures to constantly push for sales. The other thing that we don't have is we have no stock boats. We absolutely have no pressure. Our only running cost is paying our salaries to my very few staff. We run a very small team of just three in our office, not including myself and my dad, and then our office space. That's our running cost, which generally can be covered over our management fees for managing the yachts. So we have very little pressure to be pushing to sell yachts. A lot of times it's all inbound. We very rarely do outbound. So in that sense, for us, it hasn't changed as much. Our inbound, of course, has dropped, but we have not really ramped up our efforts into pushing it with sales. Right now, more of our focus is maintaining good relations with different yacht suppliers. Getting our name out there, getting our maintaining. How would we put it? We're still maintaining our relationships with all of these guys. We're going to these boat shows. We're going to making sure that we represent that. Yeah, we're still interested in selling your yachts. but we got to work together on how do we make it more attractive for the people that are remaining. Mostly that's still on, making sure that they give us an attractive deal, that we talk the same language. We have to make sure that no one is trying to step on each other's toes. You're not offering a lower price than us. We're not offering that much lower price than you. You're not trying to take a hidden cut costs from the different commissions. Everything must be standard, and we're all going to be on the same page. Otherwise, we're both going to fail in terms of sales. So I think that's kind of how it is right now. We're not going to get a sudden influx anytime soon, I can imagine. Not until China, for example, recovers. Yeah.
If someone wants to get into the F&B business, two questions. If someone wants to get into F&B business, how do they get in? Or if they want to get into the yacht business, how would they do so?
In what aspect? Well, just in general?
Yeah, in general. Yeah, in general.
So I think it does depend on what you aspire for in F&B. I think for both things it has to be passion. It's the same way I started Manhattan. I was passionate about whiskey, passionate about music, these things, and passionate about cocktails and wine. It made a lot of sense, and it shined through to all my friends that it became a very genuine place. Yachting is exactly the same. You have to make sure that you like yachts in the first place. That if you don't like what you do, you're not paying attention, you don't know the specs, you don't go yachting, you don't feel it in your heart, and you're not going to be a good sales. Both these aspects are very much sales related. No one can be a good sales if you don't really like your product, and so, yeah, I think ultimately comes from passion.
Actually, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
dude, thanks so much.
Of course,
Thanks so
man.
much for that.